Hey everybody, it's Rachel. Welcome back to the channel. Here is something that has bothered me for years. Why do people who lie, manipulate, or bulldoze their way through life seem to rise, while the decent, thoughtful ones get overlooked? And if you've ever felt like being a good person put you at a disadvantage, you're not imagining it. But the real reason why might surprise you. So, grab your coffee. We are diving into a big one today. And listen, this isn't a rant. I am not here to whine about mean people. Although, yeah, they totally suck. What I am here to do is break this whole mess down in a way that actually makes sense. Especially if you're midlife or retired or just old enough to have watched this dynamic play out in workplaces, friendships, families, volunteer groups, all of it. Because by now, you've seen certain people rise, formally or socially, and thought, really? This is who we're listening to now? So let's talk about why this happens. You have probably seen this pattern your whole life. Some people succeed not because they're wise or competent, but because they're loud or pushy or absolutely committed to being the center of the universe. These are the people who interrupt, overtalk, bulldoze, and assume they belong in charge simply because they have decided that they do. Meanwhile, thoughtful people sit there thinking, am I invisible, or do I need to break through the wall like the Kool-Aid man to be heard? And then we hear the old line, nice guys finish last. We have heard it so often that some of us have even started to believe it. Because somewhere along the way, nice got confused with weak. But here's the truth. You can still be nice and have a backbone. You can be nice and still refuse to put up with people's crap. And honestly, it's necessary. Nice people finish last only when they're conditioned to stay small, not because they lack strength, but because they've been taught that taking up space contradicts kindness. The world doesn't reward kindness, it rewards visibility. Confidence is visible, volume is visible, domination is visible, but wisdom, depth, self-awareness, integrity, emotional intelligence, those take time to notice. And most people aren't paying attention long enough to see them. So the loudest people rise first, not because they're the most capable, but because they are the most noticeable. And kind people often shrink without even realizing they're doing it, softening, apologizing, trying to keep the peace. But shrinking isn't kindness. It's self-erasure disguised as virtue. And here's the part that really sealed it for me. I talked this over with an HR exec friend, someone who has seen every workplace dynamic you can imagine. And she told me I was not imagining a thing. I was spot on. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. I worked in HR for years. And even outside of that, just being a human in the workforce long enough, you start to see these patterns repeat across generations. The loud rise. The thoughtful get overlooked. And a whole lot of competent people, especially women, but not only women, get pigeonholed or undervalued simply because they are not the ones shoving their ways to the front. And the interesting thing is that when I talk to people in their 20s and 30s now, they're seeing the exact same thing. Different era, same dynamic. It isn't a you problem. It's a pattern, one we've all been watching for decades. Now, here's the part that kind of fascinates me. This whole pattern is so common, so universal, that psychology, sociology, and even satire have named it. Because what we're talking about here isn't rare. It's everywhere. It's predictable. It's practically human nature on display. And the names for these patterns, they're not academic jargon. They are the kind of, oh my God, I have lived this, truths. Some even started as jokes, satire, and then the whole world looked around and went, yeah, that's how it actually works. So let's talk about them. First, the Peter Principle says that people rise to their level of incompetence, meaning they get promoted formally or socially because they seem confident, not because they're qualified. They climb and they climb until they hit a point where they are in way over their heads. And then they stay there forever, creating chaos for everyone beneath them. If you have ever had a boss where you thought, oh my God, how did you even get this job? That is the Peter Principle waving hello. And then there's the Dilbert Principle, originally meant as satire, a joke, a commentary on corporate absurdity, except it ended up being accurate, painfully accurate. It says that companies sometimes promote the least competent people on purpose because it's safer to put them somewhere they can't break anything essential. Well, anything essential except employee morale. So from the outside, it looks like success. From the inside, everyone knows it's a strategic relocation. Let's move the chaos into a corner office where we can keep an eye on it. If you have ever watched someone fail upward, you have witnessed satire become sociology. Finally, there is the Paula Principle, which says that women often work below their actual level of competence. Not because they lack skill, but because they have spent a lifetime being taught to soften themselves, not to overstate their strength, to stay agreeable, to stay humble, to avoid being too much, and above all, to not make waves. So while you are quietly outperforming everyone around you, someone with half your competence but triple your ego is campaigning for recognition. And the moment a woman stops being small, the moment she stands fully in her intelligence, her experience, her voice, the labels come out. It is seldom, wow, she's brilliant, she's deeply competent, she's a natural leader. Nope. It becomes, she's aggressive, she's difficult, she's intimidating. She probably slept her way into that role. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. Or, one of my faves, she's a bitch. She's a ball buster. These are not personality assessments. They are punishment for breaking the unspoken rule. Don't outshine anyone who depends on you staying small. And I'll be real, I've been called a bitch and a ball buster several times, just because I tend to be outspoken, in case you hadn't noticed. I have been told it's not all about you because I said what was on my mind. And for some of us, not all, but some, telling us to sit down and be quiet is a mistake. It makes us dig our heels in. It straightens the spine. And it sure as hell does not make us smaller. And that, in my opinion, is a good thing. You know, this isn't just work. It's freaking everywhere. These dynamics show up in families, friend groups, school committees, volunteer boards, church groups, social cliques, HOAs, the Olympics of adult bullying. Bullies do not outgrow bullying. They just get older and use a larger vocabulary. Sometimes. Other times, the vocabulary never evolves, just the tantrums do. And because kind, competent people want peace, not chaos, the bulldozers often run things by default. Now, let me be clear. Mean people are not magical. They're predictable. Mean people don't succeed because they're brilliant. They succeed because they exploit hesitation. They don't doubt themselves. They don't reflect. They don't get embarrassed. They don't back down when they're wrong. They double down. And that shamelessness looks like confidence. But it's not confidence. It's emotional emptiness wearing a costume. Confidence without conscience is just a toddler playing dress up. And we have all met that toddler. Some of us worked for that toddler. Some of us enabled that toddler. Being loud does not make someone a leader. Being mean doesn't make someone competent. Being confident doesn't make someone wise. People confuse dominance with strength, volume with intelligence, meanness with leadership, and stubbornness with conviction. But none of those things are what they appear to be. And when someone relies on bluster instead of substance, and they finally get held accountable, do they admit it or apologize? No. They deflect. They point fingers. They melt down. And they reveal just how unprepared they have always been. Loudness is temporary. Character is permanent. And maybe it's time we stop mistaking noise for leadership and start expecting actual competence again. Mean people can fake confidence. They cannot fake character. And thoughtful, emotionally intelligent people carry strengths the bulldozers cannot touch. Depth, integrity, self-awareness, consistency, long-term thinking, actual wisdom, steady leadership. Success built on ego is quick but fragile. Success built on character is slow but permanent. If you have ever felt overlooked, hear me clearly. You were not undervalued because you lack strength. Your strength just take time to see, and people today don't like waiting for anything. They want instant answers, instant confidence, instant authority, and mean people are really good at providing the illusion of all three. That's why they win the short game. But the short game never lasts. So what can good people actually do? Not in a self-help book kind of way, just in a real life, I want my peace and dignity kind of way. Well, first, stop shrinking. Being kind doesn't require being small. And then speak more directly. Clarity is not cruelty. Third, hold your boundaries. You don't have to match aggression. Just don't fold in the face of it. And protect your energy. Not everyone deserves access to your emotional bandwidth. Fifth, I think it's fifth, know your strengths. Kindness paired with self-respect is one of the most powerful forces on earth. And then stop manipulation early. Walk away. Your peace is worth more than someone else's approval. And finally, don't try to win the way mean people win. Their victories evaporate the moment people stop fearing them. Yours don't. Simple, human, powerful. Let's just say it. Mean people suck. And we need to stop letting them shape our environments, our expectations, our self-worth. Good people have been quiet for too long. It's time we speak up, stand up, and stop apologizing for taking up space we have earned. But here's the bad part. I really hate to admit this. This dynamic, it's probably never going to fully disappear. It's human nature. There will always be people who push, bulldoze, manipulate, and rise through sheer force of personality. But the point isn't to change them. The point is to understand the pattern so you don't take it personally, and so you can choose how you move through the world with your eyes open. When you see the dynamic clearly, you stop hoping mean people will suddenly become self-aware. It ain't happening. And you start putting yourself in environments, roles, and relationships where your quiet strength is actually seen. You stop shrinking. You stop waiting to be recognized. You stop assuming it's your fault, and you start taking up space that was always meant for you. And hey, you might totally disagree with me. You might have been lucky enough to always work with saints while I had a front row seat to the circus. That is fantastic. This is just what I have seen and what a lot of us have seen, and what plenty of younger people are telling me they are seeing now too. You don't have to take my word for anything. Just take what resonates. Honestly, this whole thing just stems from a dinner time conversation, and I figured I would chat about it. Now, before I go, let me throw in a little philosophical layer, because I cannot help myself. Stoicism reminds us that character is the one thing we can truly control. Jung reminds us that ignoring our shadow leaves us vulnerable to people who weaponize theirs. Buddhism reminds us that aggression comes from suffering, not strength. Hemingway tells us to sharpen our crap detector. Thoreau reminds us to live deliberately, not performatively. Put all of that together, and it becomes pretty clear. The world misunderstands good people because goodness is quiet, and noise is mistaken for power. But noise isn't power. Quiet strength is. Thanks for being here with me today. Thanks for listening, thinking, and for showing up with your quiet strength. Take care of you, and I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.